Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Rooftop Conversations with May. I have someone who is super hilarious and such a great time. I was so blessed to meet this person in 2015 at an internship. So please welcome Terrell Sykes. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Terrell, hey.
Hi, thank you, May, for having me on here. Like May mentioned, we met in 2015. She's a great woman, smart, also funny. I think that's why we click. Our sense of humor is very similar.
I think we're also
um,
very like wild and rambunctious people. So that's how we kind of like get along.
that's really what it is, though. I really think that is true, though. Are not necessarily introverts per se.
Oh, you know what's so funny? So I'm asking like everybody. So and you're gonna have to answer this one too. I'm asking every single person that comes on the show what their first impression of me is, and I think everyone's been giving the same general response. So I want to hear your response. Like I think you mentioned it, but your first response of me, and like be honest. Like people are like being too nice. I'm like, no, I need to hear like the real like. I want to hear it.
Well, if I have to be honest, my first impression was, I don't know, I just like you. I'm pretty a person that kind of reads vibes and stuff like that, and you just have this energy that it draws people in. It was more kind of like I guess it was more kindred spiritish. It was like, I feel like she would get me and I would get her. And that's exactly what happened. And we bounced off that way. It was just like one of those feels like, there's some people where, I don't know, you can't sometimes articulate where it's just like, you get a vibe and you're just like, no thanks. And maybe they'll prove you wrong, right? But from you off the top, it's just like, no, this is a good person. This is what I want to show up.
Oh, thank you. No, and I feel really welcomed. Like, so just a little background for the viewers. Sorrel and I met at a government, we're not going to really say who because, people are listening and things like that. But we met at a government internship here in New York City. I came into the internship like midway. So I had come from another internship in the summer in DC and I came into this city internship right in the middle, and everyone already knew each other. People were already friends and forming relationships. So I kind of came in as like a newbie, but I felt, and even like to this day, like I still keep in touch with every single person from that internship in some way, shape, or form. So like, and Terrell was one of those people who really like opened and welcomed me to the office with open arms. So, and thank you for that. And
You made
you know,
it easy.
yeah, I mean, like, and I agree with the vibes thing. I think, like, as I've gotten older and, like, I've always had an intuition of, like, okay, this is good people. I'm going to hang out with them. This person gives me this energy I want to be around. And, like, I share that same sentiment with you. I think you're a very warm person, which is, like, really interesting to see, like, in the public sector in New York and to work for the city and things. Well, not saying working for the city directly, but saying, like, someone who's in that policy government field and things like that because it could kind of get catty in that field. It can kind of get like,
It can. It definitely
it
can.
can, yeah. So like to see like really good people in the field, it kind of gives me like hope, not just for someone who wants to be in that field, but like for the people of our city, where like, okay, you have policymakers, you have aspiring legislators who want to do good because they're just good people, and like I love that feeling about you. So let me start off by asking you had a very very like straight line career in the public sector in working for policy and working for doing operations and things like that. So I just want to hear about your story from you. What brought you like what was your motivation for getting into this field? Just because it's not for everybody, so it really does take a certain type of person to do this work. Like I always say, government work is 12 hours of work with little pay. So, and then you get backlash. So it's like, oh, it takes a certain type of person to do this work. So, like, why did you choose it? And, like, I just want to hear from you. Like, what was the motivation?
I guess I always had been like, I wouldn't say I've always been like service motivated in terms of my actions a lot of times. And also, I like a lot of things I do, I try to. Like, whenever, you have jobs that are just to get money and perhaps, get some skills. But once I got like a bit older and I had more leeway and control and like purpose in like my employment and how I was getting money, I always knew that it needed to be something service related and something that also like had a objective or mission that I can agree with. So that's kind of why I've always steered clear of certain career paths that may be like lucrative, but the mission is just make money, I guess, right? And that's not necessarily where I kind of always went. So I've gotten dabbled in quite a few fields actually in my career. I've dealt with law enforcement to some capacity, uh, like local government, um, legal field, and like even the medical field. And each of those roles that I've had, they've had like overarching goals that pretty much help the public in some way. And I've always enjoyed that, and it's always made me it's motivated me at least to kind of like do my best where I'm at. So I didn't feel like I'm just here collecting a paycheck. It was more like, all right, well, people need me to do what I need to do in order to help them, or at least help others help them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I share the same sentiment too. Coming into the legal field, everyone's always like, "You're gonna make so much money." I'm like, no, no, no. That's the corporate lawyers that make the six figures. The public interest lawyers make like not that much. But I think like I always have to rationalize to people like, like you said, service is such a big part of my mission, and I can agree with you. Like that's sometimes it's not about the money; it's about what can you give back to the city. And then like you're a local New Yorker just as much as like just like me, and I think every New Yorker has that pride. Like we really do love New York. Like it's not there's no question about it, and you want to give back to the city that raised you, that made you, and that made that shaped everything. Um, so like from like your years of public service, so what was like some lessons that you've learned, and just especially for me, that's like I'm someone that's like trying to enter that field, or for other people who might be listening, what are some like the biggest lessons, and challenges too? Because it's not an easy field to be in, and you have to make sacrifices and things like that. So
So one of the main, I guess there's a number of main things I learned. I guess number one is trying to keep, if you're working someplace not out of necessity and because you started wanting to be there, keeping a mission in mind. I'm assuming it's a noble mission depending on where you're working and stuff like that. Keeping the mission in mind is really important, and it's kind of like a motivator when the work seems maybe like very boring or monotonous or almost pointless. You're like, what am I doing here? And you have to remember where your part of that work fits into the bigger picture. And sometimes it's applicable, sometimes it's not, and sometimes you're just like, this literally is busy work. And that kind of transitions to my next thing I learned, which was advocating for yourself. That's something I find that and this goes across multiple generations of the workforce, where that seems like a hard thing for people to do, or something doesn't seem right. Saying something and dealing with it can be hard, can be dangerous. You don't want to risk. So it's not just like it's a courage thing on philosophical principle. If you have responsibilities to your family or whatever, I can see people not wanting to do that, but I find that doing that, wherever the result it ends in, is probably the most helpful in at least keeping you on track of what you want to do. And also maybe setting the path for other people who come after you or currently there who may not have that same ability or courage to stay when something's wrong or not working. And sometimes, depending on who you're saying this to, some people take it well and learn from it, and you actually make a real change within an organization. Some people, and you just keep doing what you do until you have to leave because you come at a standstill. You've done your part.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like I agree with those 2 points. As someone who's had, I haven't like really like honestly had a real job because I've just been a student my whole life, but even internships, like the public sector, it like at first glance like, oh yeah, we're a welcoming community, and like it's like it's like, oh yeah, everything's like, we're here for you, we're here for the people, we're here for everything. But sometimes it's like, I mean, the reality is like, unfortunately, there like the government, even especially New York City government, despite how diverse it may be, it's still predominantly white, upper class or middle class. Still, there's certain amount of privilege in that. And then likewise the nonprofits, where you have the nonprofit industrial complex where you have a lot of privileged people who are at the head of these big organizations. And like, I think you made a great point. Like, you have to, especially as like, I mean, it sucks that it has to be like this, but like, especially as like in terms of color, we have to, or like employees of color, we like there are times when our employee or like our higher up, it's not like they may have like no malcontent towards it, but they just don't know, and we just have to like advocate for ourselves. Like, hey, this is what it seems like right now. What can you do to like make this a better work environment for me? Because like it's not enough to just to put bodies in there for diversity or whatever, but it's like, okay, what can you do to make this a better environment for, not like you said, not just yourselves, but the people coming after you and things like that. And yeah, so like that's like, I think that's like a big lesson for, unfortunately, a lot of us who have to do these like unpaid internships for like long hours, and like, you know, that's the only way you can really get in, and it sucks. It really does, you know.
It does, and I like that's an important point that you bring up, particularly on race, because there's other different, like, I guess, minority groups and demographics that are underrepresented. But I find, at least in like from my experience in like the nonprofit field, or like a lot of times, race becomes like the biggest disconnect, even if maybe management is a bit more aware of that and tries to diversify staff. Management tends to be just overwhelmingly white, even if it's white and maybe white and female, or and male a better proportion of that, or white and there are gay and straight people. It's still just white at the same time, and sure, they have different perspectives from those different lights, being a perspective of a female, perspective of a hetero versus a straight gay person is different. But that racial background is just, it still will somehow become an echo chamber up there, and you still miss out on really good perspective from someone who hasn't had that type of lifestyle. That the privilege that comes with being white of any demographic.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think like even the most like progressive like government offices, I think New York City in a way is progressive, but not there. I don't know if that makes sense. I think judging from like, we have like, I think I tell one of my friends this all the time, New York politicians, they come in like with good intentions, but it's just not there yet. I think like even the most like progressive council member, the most progressive elected official, you're still missing some component of it, and I think like I don't know, like, it's just like one of those things that you wonder, like, what can we do better in government? What can we do better? How can we shape politics to make it work for us as opposed to a certain demographic and things like that, Which brings me to my next question. Like, so you do mention like all these intersectionalities, like you have not just race, but you have like gender identity, you have sexual orientation and things like that. How have those played a role, like, from your experience working in these fields? Like, so you mentioned, like, yeah, you have folks who are female, who are white, but they may have experiences being like a cis woman. You may have someone who identifies as white, but also identifies as gay. So, like, how have you seen those intersections play out in terms of, like, being in, like, the nonprofit sector or being in the government and things like that?
And I guess the way best I can answer is like, how have I seen play out in all my, like, all the fields that I've worked in. And honestly, it's at least for me personally, like, I like to think of myself as I guess a dual minority due to my, like, sexuality and due to my race. And not saying that one trumps the other, but I find that 9 times out of 10, race will trump it in terms of which will be a factor 9 times out of 10. Now, there have been issues with sexuality, but those are mitigated a little easier because it's not as, I guess, the issue with race, it's more about perception. And sexuality can be about perception too, depending on how someone, I guess, maybe acts, or what you perceive of sexuality to be represented by, right? But for me, it's been race. But for other people, I've seen, like, let's say for for, let's say, women, or particularly women of color who happen to be a woman of color, and non-heterosexual. Like,
Yeah.
it's people have confided to me, it's not easy. It's like a constant struggle of proving yourself, proving you're confident in this way, proving that it's either proving that you're not too harsh, or you're not too soft, or you're not too sensitive, and that you can still, especially when it comes to like trying to get positions of power management, proving that you're a confident leader. And that I've seen that in all the fields I've worked in, where it's just like there's just that. I don't want to call it a chip on the shoulder, because it isn't a chip. It's just like that extra like baggage and that you have to carry. It's not that you're choosing to. It's just that that's put on you by what people perceive you on.
Yeah,
So
no, definitely.
I've honestly, I can't say it's showed up. It's reared its face more in one place or other. Maybe more so in government entities than not for profits, because at least there's that. Even though there's a lot of work that can be done there, at least there's an attempt. And while in government agencies, there's a lot of old guard that's just been there for decades and decades, who are just. I mean, one of my biggest things was when I worked for a certain agency. It's more of a utility-based agency, I'll say that. And we had to kind of keep things EEO compliant, involving restrooms. So we were putting up signage and making people aware that people can use whatever restroom in these facilities in this government agency that like aligned with their gender identity or whatever. We put up signs. We even had training, like presentations and stuff like that. And people were really adamantly against it vocally. There was one person who even went around the building ripping off the signs, or writing the words, trigger warning for anyone listening, tranny on the signs. And that was really, like, it was just so terrible to me. I mean, eventually we found that person, because I was the group that was actually putting up the signs and helping with this initiative. So I was a little more invested in it. And I was just appalled. So I definitely followed up, and, we were able to look on cameras and see who was doing it. And, that person was reprimanded as much as they could be as an employee in the city. But, yeah. So that's probably the worst instance I've seen. It's usually more in government agencies where it can go rampant due to a number of reasons.
Wow, I am so appalled that this happens, because I think when you're working for a government agency, obviously you have people that like really truly are passionate for working there, and then you have like the I'm just gonna get a paycheck and leave at the end of the day folks. But it kind of sucks, is like regardless of your motivation for working there, you're supposed to represent New York City, and like to have that kind of behavior reflected, like someone who's working for the government, who's representing like these. I think it's like the most diverse place in the world to do that sort of behavior and to write homophobic, transphobic slurs. That's not only unprofessional, but just kind of like jarring to know that this is supposed to be a city that's like supposed to be a safe. I'm gonna put this in quotes, safe city. Yet you have folks like this being hired in positions where you're supposed to represent the constituency in New York. And that's so appalling to me. I'm so sorry that had to happen to you. And like that's something that like that I would be like upset if I saw that as well.
I mean, yeah, I feel like, I mean, that's just something we have to do better as a society, and even have better safeguards for people who work within government. I mean, that's one example. There's countless other examples that deal with like issues of race within the city agency, or issues of sexuality, or very transphobic, or even just sexist. That's another thing where that isn't really addressed. So we just have to do like that. That's why I'm really passionate about, I guess, politics and being a part of that, because hopefully once old guard is gone, or even I want to place this on older people, because there are some young people too who definitely are way out of it, but more so once that old system is kind of like phased out, hopefully we can set up something better as a society. as individuals.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see like, I mean, for New York, we have 2021's elections coming up, and we don't really know how it's going to be like in the midst of like COVID-19 and how people are going to get to go out and vote. But basically, every seat is up for grabs. It's for the city council, the mayor, all the borough presidents positions. So, like, from like your perspective here, like from like your like experience being in the city, how do you like? Do you think like New York will head into a more progressive like direction? I know there's like a lot more younger candidates running. You have more progressive candidates who are riding the wave of like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez coming in to run for like not just like local government seats, but also state assembly, Congress. Do you think that's going to change in New York? Do you think like from your experience, like, do you think younger or not younger, but more like anti-establishment views are going to be in the city, or do you think it's going to just continue on with the same like five people that we've been seeing in government? Because only my concern is like like I'm someone like, I mean, just like this is like my personal view. I am a little like hypercritical of how New York City has run it politically, just because you see, like for example, the Board of Elections recently removed Bernie Sanders' name from the ballot, basically canceling our primaries. And while Senator Sanders hasn't formally resigned or dropped out of the race, he just suspended his campaign, and he was supposed to be still on the ballot, but New York Board of Elections was like, nope, we're going to take him out. And it kind of like shows, or at least for a lot of like socialists, like more like more liberal circles, they're like, oh, this is like New York's establishment taking over again. So what are you? I mean, sorry for making the question really long,
okay.
but just to say, like, do you think it's going to be the same five like people running the show again? Like I've like just because like I've been watching local politics since I was like younger, and I've seen like basically the same names just keep. It's like, okay, you're gonna become a city council member, then they become public advocate, then they become mayor, aka we all know who we're talking about right now, and then he's trying to become president. Everyone's just like trying to move up the ladder. But like, do you think someone new can potentially change the game in New York City?
I want to be optimistic and believe that. Honestly, no. I mean, well, this is what I wanted to say. Like, I try to, but a few months ago, maybe if you were asking me this in the beginning of February or January, I'd been like, it seems like it's in a stuck cycle that it is possible to break that cycle in these random dynasties, so to speak. But it'll be a lot harder. Now I feel like due to this pandemic, some people are seeing that just how seriously broken the system can be and is for them. A lot of New Yorkers who may have been a bit more conservative-minded for whatever reason, and I only say that just because I can understand people of privilege and money being that way. The impoverished have same outlooks has always confused me.
Wait, sorry, Terrel, do you mind repeating that one point? I think you were frozen for like 2 seconds. Hello?
Gotcha. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're all good.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So I was saying how it always confused me how maybe more impoverished members of our communities have more conservative mindset, fiscally conservative mindsets. But I feel like the COVID situation, this pandemic, has maybe awakened them in a sense to that the system kind of has to change. There needs to be better security nets in place, because this is really about survival. It's not even about philosophical uses of, let's say, tax money or how you believe things and how people should act in a social stance. It's about when something like this happens, a dire emergency, people will die when we don't have things in place that protects them. And that is the medical supplies. My borough, where I'm from, the Bronx, is probably one of the most unhealthiest counties in of the 5 boroughs. And, that's not an accident. That's just something that's been drastically overlooked by the people in charge for a long time. They haven't galvanized the community. They haven't galvanized stakeholders to really kind of address this issue the way it really needs to be addressed. And the pandemic has only just exacerbated that for people of color and people of lower socioeconomic statuses. So I'm hoping that this is a wake up call that they really can't just have a nice sound bite or a really nice sounding, I don't know, campaign slogan, or they just agree with something that they might agree with personally based on some kind of social dogmas, and start thinking about how a candidate and what a candidate actually wants to do to help them and their families and and uplift them, or at least protect them. At the very least, protect them. But even if you're not uplifting them, we're at the point where we can't even count on protection of that. Like, too many people have died, and over these last few months because of lack of actual like contingencies and protections in place for the citizens.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I think for a lot of us, it's like I was talking to a friend, like it's really frustrating to see people who have been doing the work, the organizing work, or been seeing the work at least. We're like COVID-19 has revealed a lot of things that has made us more frustrated. Whether it's the government, whether it's capitalism, we see Black and Brown communities like it's the health disparities have it's been before COVID. You know, this was pre-COVID. We've seen this happen right before this pandemic. I think people who have been doing this work, who live in these circumstances, we've seen it. We're frustrated. We're more angry, and I'm hoping this pandemic is showing folks who are more privileged because now it's impacting them too. We need to fix housing in New York City. We need to fix our healthcare system. We need to fix transportation. The way that our subways are run, the way that city bikes are being more accessible now because of the pandemic. This, I think, like going forward for 2021, candidates need to step up. I don't want to hear the same progressive views like you said. There needs to be accountability now. And of course, like whoever becomes the next mayor, I know I don't know. Like I know one person who's like thinking of running for mayor, or two people, but I don't know if it's like a thing. But I think they're gonna need to step it up. Like the two people that I'm thinking about, they've been in city government for so long and have held high positions. I think I've seen they've been doing some great work with COVID, but I think I need them to step it up. And it leads me to my next question. You're interested in running for public office yourself, and I think that's great. That I think I love, especially now with like this whole now people want more and expect more from like our government, that people are stepping up to the plate. Like, well, I'm gonna run. Like, and it's not just your typical like lawyer or your typical what's a person like like the typical lawyer, the typical
seasoned politician,
or a Cuomo or what's his name, the Crowleys or whatever. Now this is like real people. Now, like, no, we're gonna take up the mantle. So, what was your motivation for because I'm not gonna reveal your exact plans, but you have expressed interest for running for public office. So why is that? And like, what motivations do you have for like taking on such? It takes a certain type of person, takes a certain type of courage and vulnerability to put yourself into this, like to throw yourself into that ring. So why public office? Like what motivated you to do that?
I mean, I've lived in the city pretty much all my life. Well, literally all my life. I was born here. And there's so much involvement and being. I've always been active in being involved with or trying to be involved in the political process. Always going out and vote, keeping up with research, seeing where people stand with stuff. And then I realized, a lot of things or a lot of decisions, because of my background, a lot of this is motivation due to my will, my pretty much overall goal of being of service, but also my background and careers that I've been in, where I see that, some policy decisions that are terrible for the community as a whole that have been made in my communities and parts of the city have no real logic other than greed behind them, or because of outside influences, that just don't make sense or don't really benefit constituents. And I've also, having worked in certain government, agencies and for politicians, I also realized, I worked for a internship for a politician that wasn't, one that represented what I lived, but I learned so much while there that I didn't realize um, was kind of important for where I lived. And I love the fact that they were kind of open and transparent with their constituencies, or at least wanted to get their, like, the borough or the place or whatever they represented it involved in that policy, in policies, and engaged. I don't really get that for where I am right now. It seems like, a lot of stuff I didn't hear about or know about or even knew existed until I worked in another place. And I feel that lack of visibility, and it's not like it's not me not looking for it. It's just that it's just not out there for some reason. It's like the people who are in the know are in the know, and government is run the way it is there. And I think that's not an effective way of doing it. And I feel like if we are making like political decisions, the better we need to, one, address the issues. Now, every politician can address issues, right? That's part of their spiel. But while addressing this issue, not just saying this is a problem, poor housing, healthcare in this area is a problem. We got to do something about it. And then 4 or 5 decades later, they didn't do anything. That's not acceptable. All right,
Yeah.
So that's really not acceptable. I think we need to actually start respecting these people who just keep, bringing these topics up and not doing anything to do stuff. And by doing stuff, also using technology such as using data. One of the things I learned at one of my positions was doing that. Something as simple as, analyzing 301 data to see what constituents really complained about to the city and stuff like that, and making policy around that versus a select group of people who maybe represent neighborhoods or something like that and say this is an issue, and then you're like, okay, that's nice that you're bringing it up. It sounds like a personal issue more so, but most of your constituents are complaining. Like one person will complain about, I don't know, local community meters or something over a city, where if you look at the 301 data, most of it's about hot water issues or homeless encampments. These are the things that need to be brought up to your representatives if you're going to represent. Like if you're a part of a body of representatives and you're going to bring up the constituencies of your neighborhood or community board to a government official, it shouldn't be stuff that just annoys you. It should be stuff based on data, the input of the actual community as a whole, not just people who may attend certain meetings, and actually come up with solutions, not just state what the problem is over and over.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I didn't even know that about the 311 calls. That I've done constituent services work before for, I'm gonna say, a wealthier neighborhood in New York City, and I've also done constituent services work in a more working class, low income neighborhood. The 311 calls were totally different because you had in the more wealthier neighborhoods, construction noise, the garbage hasn't been picked up on time. I'm not saying those are petty issues because that adds to your quality of life, and you do deserve to have that right of comfort in your home. But when I worked for constituent services in a more working class or predominantly communities of color, it's housing, it's immigration. People were calling to get green cards, and this is pre-Trump too. So these were issues that were coming in. I think and it's just the 311 calls in, you said, the Bronx are definitely different than 311 calls in Battery Park in Manhattan or Gramercy. Those 311 calls are going to look so much different, and I think you can't look at New York as a monolith where one policy fits all, because it's not. You see, for example, you see how COVID-19 is impacting our city very, very disproportionately. So, and I think I really commend you for taking that step of to want to run and to want to create change. And I'm when your name's on the ballot, I mean, okay, well, I'm not a Bronx constituent, but I got people up there. I will let them know. Please vote for my friend. No, and I agree. I think it's interesting. I think you brought community boards and the way that people how the Bronx, you get you haven't heard of certain things until you worked for a representative who represents another borough. And I think I noticed about the way politics are run. I've noticed in the city, in the city, okay, in Manhattan. I see this is how we're from New York. So when you're from New York, you call Manhattan the city, and everything else is your borough. Oh my god. Okay, so when you're thinking about Manhattan, this is for viewers who aren't from here. When you're talking about Manhattan, you have more, like you have representatives who and like community boards are better funded, right? You have like they said Manhattan CB1 community board one is the most like productive and the most like well run community board. But okay, but think about it. What neighborhood are you representing? Tribeca, Battery Park, Financial District? Of course it's gonna be well run because people have the resources. People also have time to volunteer and they don't have to worry about like X, Y, and Z. They have the time to dedicate to that community board. Right? Yes, of course it's gonna be well funded because it's in a wealthier neighborhood. But I know there's some CBs in Brooklyn, like community boards in Brooklyn, that are not as, I don't want to use the word productive because that's not fair, but not as Steve Oil's energy, let's say, in Manhattan because the resources are there. I'm not sure how it is in the Bronx. I'm not too familiar with Bronx politics, but like I know that like the figures there, even like I've been in city politics for a while. I still don't really know exactly the big power players up there. I know like the Diaz's are like a big the dynasty. That's my dynasty. I'm gonna leave like my views on that like on the side on the purpose of the show. And then the only other player that I've seen like has been really like vocal, at least is Richie Torres, who's like young. I think he came to the council like 24. That's about it that I know for Bronx politics. But I kind of see like it's not working. You know what I mean? At least from like I don't want to say like it's not working. I'm only saying this as an outsider because I'm not a constituent, so I don't know. But like you see how like now Bronx is like the new frontier for like gentrification. You see like South Bronx is becoming now like this hub of like rapid development, Mott Haven, like a different world now and things like that. So it's like, are you really you elect all these leaders, but yet like I'm only gonna speak for development because I think that's the one thing like I've been seeing that's like not really changing. You have everyone like holding up that sign like housing for or affordable housing, blah blah blah. Yet like you still let projects that are coming in like to like working class neighborhoods that are like that's not helping the community. Like there's more luxury development that I'm seeing than affordable housing these days. So it's like it's interesting to see like at least on the land use perspective, there's so much that needs to be changed. Like the process that we currently have, the uniform land use review procedure, it works in Manhattan, but it may not work elsewhere. You know what I mean? It may not work in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. It may not work in like Mott Haven, Bronx. And people don't even know. Like honestly, I don't. I went to law school, and even ULURP, like the land procedure still confuses me. And I only know what I know because I have to work with it on a professional basis. But I can't even imagine for everyday New Yorkers to understand that process. To understand how that all works. And like I don't know. It's just like.
And that goes back to transparency and a bit.
Yeah.
I felt like one of the politicians I work with, one of their goals, or something they were good at least, is making sure that even if something, a complicated, process involved with something such as housing or land use or things like that, that the constituents were able to get a layman's breakdown of it, so they kind of could understand what was going on. They had that available. That's something I feel like is sorely missing, particularly in my borough and other boroughs, where that transparency isn't there. It's just like it's almost as if they function on the lines of people not being in the know. And I don't want to, throw people on the bus saying that, but they definitely can do a better job, even in terms of having constituents or a borough or whatever involved in the process. No one's utilizing technology the way they could to get people in the know. No one's using even old school methods of signage. I go around parts of Manhattan and see sometimes signs for, a community board meeting. I have never really seen that in the Bronx. I just got to be honest. If I ask a regular person in another borough what a community board is, they may or may not know. And that's not a good thing. As entities that have such power and are stakeholders and drivers of what happens in that borough, the fact that it's almost like it's not like there's a lack of resources to put their name out there, let people know this is what we're doing, representing this neighborhood or this neighborhood. It's almost as if they don't want to. And that's an issue for me. It's either they don't want to, or maybe they can't, or they don't know how to. Maybe whoever is a part of these things don't have the know-how to do so. So maybe that's an issue too. Maybe it's just a training issue that's not provided to some of these entities. And that's possible. If anything, COVID-19 has taught me that there are a lot of people who don't really understand a lot of the technology we have available. So I don't want to, I guess, be so negative and assume it's like, they want it that way. Some people just they don't have the skill. So maybe that could be it. But either way, it doesn't help the constituents.
I don't think it's just like, I think I agree. I think what you said is so valid. I think it's also like you mentioned earlier in our talk, perspective. People are lacking the perspective of what it is to do Bronx outreach in the Bronx, what it is to do outreach in South Brooklyn, what it is to do outreach in Queens, and how that looks like for different demographics. It's like, whether it's language accessibility, in the Bronx, you have a lot of Spanish speakers, you have a lot of Creole speakers. In Brooklyn, likewise, you have different languages. How are you going to bring that out if, you don't have those resources for people? Or even things like, I don't know, just like, I think it's just people that it's like they're coming up with great ideas, but they just don't have the perspective to go further. In my opinion, and I think one of the biggest things, so my biggest thing about New York City government is lack of diversity, because the pipeline to getting these jobs isn't inclusive. And then one of the things is, so I did a paper in law school, and the argument was one way we can promote diversity, or at least open up the pipeline for government jobs, is paying interns. I think because not everyone can afford. So so for me, my personal experience, I think I'm very privileged enough to have been able to take an unpaid internship during college, which has allowed me the experience and the connections to be able to at least work in government while in law school, to have that background, to have that knowledge. But for a lot of, and then it makes you when you have the connections, when you have the experience on your resume, and you can definitely agree with this too, it makes it easier for you to get those jobs, right? It makes it easier for you to work for an agency, or to work as a staffer in the city council. But for other people who don't have that line on their resume, it's a little harder. So what are some, in your ways, what are some ways that we could open that pipeline for folks who want to come in? It's something, other than running for office and things like that.
I think one way of doing that, and this goes back to a program that exists, I don't know what capacity it works now, and if funding's going to it still exists, it probably still does exist, but I think I've been fortunate enough I've done a number of internships, and fortunately they were all paid, and that's not the norm. But I couldn't, honestly, if they were unpaid, I wouldn't be able to afford to do that and sustain myself, or what I need to do, or even pay for school. There was a program that was run through the CUNY system. And I think maybe more colleges should probably try to mimic it to this extent, that partnered up with a group of people. They got funding. I'm not sure exactly how their funding came from. They got funding to pretty much allow students to at least work internships if they were selected based on GPA, and there's exceptions because different people's situation is different, right? And there was a extensive interview process just to kind of get you the professional skills, professional training, even along while you're even doing these internships. You would have to do these kind of weekly meetings to kind of touch base on how work skills that are very important. They would pair it with government agencies or other organizations, whatever was available that wanted to pair up with them, and send out their interns or their fellowship. It was a CUNY Service Corps. That's actually how I had one of my internships, and where I met you. And I find that was good because they paid. It wasn't too much really, to be honest, but it was something where you worked 12 hours to 20 hours a week. Making at the time it was $12 an hour. But you got that experience working in a government agency, or something that was more they also tailored it to the field that you wanted to be in also too. So they had options, and based on your skills and things that your major and skills that you exhibit during the internal process, they would pair you that way. But it was a good way of getting experience, work experience, valid work experience, and still getting paid and I think more schools should probably mimic that. Maybe they can fine tune it a little better, but at least mimic something like that. I know a lot of schools, particularly the private schools, don't really, I'm sure they have career services and some internships, but it's not as organized and robust as that, like the connections they had. And I think that would be a good way of getting people through that pipeline, because realistically, like you mentioned, it's not possible for someone to just donate 20 to 12 hours a week unpaid and still do school and then finally try to find an actual paying part-time job. Like this is not gonna happen.
Oh yeah, definitely. Exactly. Like I honestly like CUNY Service Corps is actually one of the better programs, and like I'm glad that CUNY is stepping up to do that. And I think it's a great program, especially CUNY. You have a lot of local New Yorkers who are in those schools, and like so like one thing I've noticed about like staffers in the government, they're mostly out of towners who don't have the perspective of what it means. Like I'm not saying like, oh, we're gonna ban out of towners from not working in our city. That's like an unconstitutional thing to do. But what I'm saying is like that once again perspective, like you were bringing up, they don't have the perspective. Someone from Montana or someone from Idaho does not have the perspective of coming into New York City and understanding what the problems are, and like like you and I can spot certain problems because we've been here for our whole lives and things like that. But someone else, and I think like CUNY does a great job because it's mostly you're servicing local New Yorkers for the most part, that I know from CUNY, and then you're bringing them into jobs that could potentially allow them to like work in government and to be those game changers and to have those perspectives. So yeah, CUNY is one of the better schools that does it. I know like my alma mater for undergrad does it. My law school's also done it. But the funds are limited. Like it's not like you said, it's not as organized. Like my undergrad pays $1,000 per student for like the whole summer. It's like a really like limited process. Likewise, in my law school, they're a little better at it, but it's like first come first serve basis. It's really competitive to get in, and but it's not the case with every law school. And my law school is more like public service minded, so it's a little easier. But yeah, and like I think like I don't want to. I feel like this has just become like a literally like not a trash talk, but it's kind of like we're pointing out everything wrong with our government. But I think that's what it is. I think like I appreciate us having this talk because it's like we've both been in government. It's not like we're bashing it. We've worked for these places before, whether it's in an internship capacity or not. But it's like okay, but as constituents, we're demanding more. I think that's what it is. It's like we're holding people accountable. I appreciate it because not like maybe it is, but like I like that we're having this dialogue because not a lot of people are talking about it.
That's
Everyone's like, oh, New York City. You don't like that's what like people like. I think especially like people kind of think like, oh, New York, you're a blue state. Like there's no problems there, right? Like you're not facing like it's not like the South or like in other like more suburban or rural areas where like yes, like we're more liberal towards like reproductive justice and other things, but there's still a lot of nuances that aren't there, and I think that's what it is in New York. It's like good intentions, but what else? Like I don't want you
exactly.
to yeah, it's like I think New York City politics, and like I know, like I personally know really, really genuine good people who work as elected officials or as like staffers, but at the same time it's like I think New York City politics it's like you have this really nice gift, the box is beautiful, but it's empty. That's what it seems like for me. It's like
or if it's not empty, it's like it's definitely not full, and it's the box is too big for what's actually in it.
Yes, exactly. It's like a gift card that you kind of like. It's like a $50 gift card that you have, but like some of it's already been used, and you're like, I don't really want.
Exactly.
That's what it is. Like I'm so glad to be a New Yorker. Like I think every New Yorker, like born and raised New Yorker, has like the biggest pride for the city. We love the city, but we want to see them do more. And like I think like I cannot wait to see what 2021 brings. Am I optimistic? I wish I could say I am, but I don't know because like even if you get the most like let's say you get like an AOC in New York, you know what I mean? how many policies are going to be passed in the chambers? You know, like how many, what really is going to get done? Even with like the DA's race, I don't know if you were seeing, we had in Queens DA, you had a very, very progressive candidate, Tiffany Caban, who almost won, but then was, you know, but ended up, you know, losing to on a more the establishment candidate, or like the more like, you know, like you said, the old timers and things like that. So it's the same, you know, group of people that's running, and so like, and I see the candidates for mayor, right? It's the same players, the same faces, the same names, and like the same thing for the borough presidents, the same players, the same names. Council's a little better where, you know, because people, like, there's new fresher faces, but like it's the same thing. People that were staffers, like people like in my district, I'm like, I look like, because I thought about running, but I was like, I don't know, I don't, it's not my time. But like in my district, it's all the staffers from my current council member running. So I'm like, okay, so you either have to be on a community board, which is hard to get into as it is. It's like that is like my friend and I were talking. It's elitist in its own way, or you have to be a staffer, which is another elite. And it's just like, okay, so how about everyday folks that want to run and represent their constituency? You know, so I don't know. I'm trying to be positive. I feel like I'm more positive. Like, I feel like the whole thing has been like, oh, New York City government sucks, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? It's true. We're saying, look, this is like what independent run media. Let's just say what we have to say. Sure. So, exactly. We're not getting paid to show anything. And we're not throwing anybody on the bus. So like it's you know, we're you know, I think I respect all the people I've worked for down the line, and you know, but you know, respect most of the people I work for. Yeah, for the most part, yeah, like, you know, but so like, you know, like, so thank you so much for sharing that perspective with me. Let me just double check the time, because like last time I have a habit of running late. I like my last interview went on like for ages. I'm like, wait, all the time. But anyway, Terrel, before I think we are cutting it close. So before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to say? And like, I just want to thank you so much for sharing that perspective. And it's like self promotion. That's like, if you want to drop an Instagram handle, if you want to drop like a project you're doing, this is your time. Or even like talk about like one topic that we haven't covered, because you know we're out here, you know, giving the news that, you know, the independent thoughts that we got. So.
You know, honestly, I don't know. I've never been big for dropping my Instagram handle, but I have to be better with that. That's going back to that earlier conversation about utilizing technology and social media. So I will do that. But my current project is pretty much due to the pandemic. I'm working at home, and the organization I work for, it's a lot of good work, and its mission is really good. So I've been focusing on that, and also mostly like trying to organize steps for my political, like my potential political career. This is definitely on a monkey wrench in this pandemic. However, still optimistic, and at the very least, the experience is worth it, because you know, however this goes, that's still my goal. So I will continue to do what I need to do to set this up. So that's pretty much my project. But my Instagram handle is Sykes Inspired. So
I will put it on the below. I will put it below for people to follow. But like, thank you so much. I'm rooting for you. I'm so excited to see you run. I hope, you know, I called dibs on a volunteer position in policy, but and like obviously, like, I'm not from the Bronx, but I will try to get, you know, my contacts over there to vote for you. So like, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And like, you know, actually, before we wrap up, because I feel like we haven't seen, am I allowed to say this, like, body tea come out?
Oh my God.
You know, like, how have you been, you know, I mean, look, it's like you work hard, but you gotta play harder. So, like, how have you been turning up this quarantine? How?
I have to be honest, it has been a dry spell. I mean, it's been a dry spell. It's been Definitely, I don't have a quarantine.
No phone
I
call. But not even like Zoom happy hours, like like I don't know, like Zoom parties. You're not turning up like
yes,
virtually.
I am. Not in romantic ways, but honestly, I have been staying in touch with like my friends, like even you. My birthday had just passed. The
Yes.
12th, early season.
Mm.
Well, what was left of it. and and that was really fun. A lot of people showed up. It was like almost 50 people on that call, so that was actually fun. And then weekly, I kind of do stuff. Like friends will invite me. We'll drink and discuss random things, hobbies, and stuff like that. So I've been staying connected, and that's actually been really helpful. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people should really try that. It's been really nice, even seeing people who weren't really the most tech savvy, kind of helping them, like kind of connect. Like, all right, let me show you how to download Zoom or use your Facebook Messenger to do this, so you can contact
Mm.
people. And that's actually, I feel good about that because it is
Yeah.
helping people connected, staying connected myself.
I think one of like the blessings from this pandemic is allowing people to like reach out to others that they haven't spoken to a long time. Like I mean, like at my last call that I had with the college friend, we were talking about like this rooftop conversations thing being a great way for me to reconnect. Like I haven't seen you in like
Oof.
2015. Oh my god, maybe 5 years?
Damn, it has been a while. I mean, we always keep in contact, so it's not like we like
It
drive up.
doesn't feel like it. Wow. Okay, so this
But just like we need to actually,
we're gonna do a reunion post COVID.
quarantine's over.
Yeah, when quarantine's over, we're gonna do a reunion.
Exactly. Yes. Who I spoke to the other day? Actually, Aqua.
You did. Oh wow.
Yes.
Okay.
She's in Canada now.
Oh, okay. She's always gonna ask me to go to Paris. Okay, so like, yeah,
Yes.
but yes, for the viewers, all of us are still in really good touch. Like, I still am in close contact with a bunch of us that work in that office. So like, but yeah, we don't definitely have to do a reunion. I'm glad. Like, hopefully, people see this. They're like, oh wait, we gotta do a blank blank blank. I don't want to reveal the but
Yep.
blank reunion soon. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much, Terrel, for coming on. And of course, like once that political, once you throw in your name in the ballot, we got you. So thank you so much for sharing your insight. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me, and also like it's always fun talking with you. So
of course, thank you so much.
No problem.